War in southern Ukraine is defined less by dramatic breakthroughs and more by grinding positional struggle. Across the wide, exposed plains of Zaporizhzhia, mobility is constrained not by terrain alone but by surveillance, artillery reach, and the constant presence of drones overhead. Every movement is observed, every concentration of armor risks rapid detection, and every defensive line is shaped by the expectation of long-range fires. Within this environment lies the small settlement of Prydorozhnie, a location insignificant in size, yet meaningful in operational geometry. Villages such as this often function not as objectives in themselves, but as anchors within a defensive grid. Control of them influences supply routes, observation corridors, artillery positioning, and the security of adjacent strongpoints. When reports emerged that Russian forces had taken control of the settlement, the development immediately drew attention from observers tracking the southern theater. Not because a single village determines the outcome of a campaign, but because incremental territorial adjustments frequently signal deeper tactical intent. From a distance, Prydorozhnie appeared unremarkable. A cluster of low structures, narrow roads cutting through open land, scattered tree lines offering limited concealment. But military planners rarely judge terrain by appearance alone. The surrounding area provided potential staging positions for artillery observation and drone reconnaissance. Dirt roads connected to broader supply paths, allowing movement of ammunition, fuel, and reinforcements. Control of the settlement could complicate an opponent's logistics while simplifying one's own forward operations. Over months of conflict, defensive works had taken shape across the region. Trenches zigzagged through fields, firing positions were reinforced, approach routes were watched carefully. Any attacking force would have to cross exposed ground while under observation, one of the most dangerous maneuvers in modern warfare. For the Vostok Group, the objective demanded coordination rather than speed. Assault units alone could not succeed without preparatory fires. Armor required infantry screens. Drone operators needed clear communication with artillery batteries positioned kilometers behind the line. Long before troops advance, the battlefield is shaped by fire. Reports and released footage indicated that the opening phase involved concentrated artillery activity. Multiple launch rocket systems sent salvos arching into the winter sky, their launches brief flashes of violent orange against the pale horizon. Seconds later came the distant impacts, rapid, overlapping detonations designed less as isolated strikes and more as sustained pressure. The psychological dimension of such bombardments is difficult to overstate. Even well-prepared defenders must constantly relocate, reassess communications, and manage the risk of supply disruption. Positions that appear stable on maps can become fragile once subjected to repeated shockwaves. Drone surveillance increasingly plays a role in this phase. Small aerial platforms can observe movement, identify active firing points, and relay coordinates with speed that earlier generations of soldiers could scarcely imagine. What once took hours can now happen in minutes. Winter visibility added another layer of complexity. As the bombardment continued, the purpose was not necessarily immediate destruction of every defensive node, but the gradual erosion of cohesion, forcing defenders to react, reposition, and expend energy before the ground assault even began. Modern offensives often hinge on this invisible countdown. When assault units finally move, they do so into uncertainty. Russian forward elements reportedly began advancing after preparatory fires had intensified. Rather than a single mass push, such operations typically involve smaller groups maneuvering along multiple approach lines, attempting to narrow angles of exposure. Infantry would likely have progressed cautiously, using terrain wherever possible. In open winter landscapes, even slight elevation changes can mean the difference between concealment and exposure. Engineers may have been tasked with addressing obstacles, clearing paths, or marking safer routes through contested ground. Armored vehicles, when deployed, provide both protection and firepower, yet they also draw attention. Their presence can alter the tempo of engagement, forcing defenders to reveal positions sooner than planned. Communication becomes paramount in these moments. Units must remain synchronized despite noise, weather, and the unpredictable friction that defines combat. A delayed signal, a misunderstood coordinate, small errors can ripple outward with serious consequences. Defensive networks are designed to absorb shock, but they are not immovable. Sustained pressure can gradually compress a defensive perimeter, limiting options for maneuver. Routes that once allowed lateral movement may fall under observation. Supply becomes more complicated. Decision-making accelerates as commanders weigh whether to reinforce positions or pull back to avoid deeper vulnerability. Technology adds further strain. The modern battlefield is increasingly transparent. Prolonged activity risks detection from above. Drone footage released in recent years has repeatedly shown how quickly static positions can attract attention once identified. Under such conditions, even temporary withdrawals can reshape the tactical picture. What begins as a localized adjustment may open space for an opposing force to push closer, establishing footholds that are difficult to reverse without significant effort. As the engagement around Prydorozhnie intensified, the fight appeared less like a single dramatic clash and more like a tightening spiral. Pressure applied, responses measured, ground contested step by step. Urban and semi-urban terrain transforms combat instantly. Fields give way to structures. Lines of sight shorten. Every building becomes both shelter and potential hazard. Movement slows, but danger multiplies. Assault units entering a settlement must think three-dimensionally, scanning windows, rooftops, alleyways, and interiors simultaneously. Coordination between infantry and supporting elements becomes even more critical, as the margin for error narrows dramatically. Winter adds an eerie stillness to such environments. Snow muffles footsteps, yet shattered glass and debris betray movement. Smoke lingers longer in cold air, drifting through skeletal streets. Control of key intersections often determines the flow of fighting. Once secured, they allow safer passage for follow-on elements while restricting an opponent's ability to countermaneuver. Progress in these spaces is rarely fast. It is deliberate, methodical, measured not in kilometers but in buildings. And with each secured structure, the balance shifts incrementally. In conflicts throughout history, symbolic acts have carried weight beyond their immediate tactical value. Footage released by the Russian Ministry of Defense appeared to show soldiers raising a flag within Prydorozhnie, an image intended to signal control after intense fighting. Such moments resonate because they compress a complex sequence of events into a single visual: movement, pressure, arrival. Yet experienced observers understand that control on a battlefield is rarely absolute. Surrounding areas remain contested, and the wider operational picture continues to evolve. Still, symbols matter. To troops, to planners, and to audiences far from the front, they mark phases in an ongoing struggle. Until now, that's all for today, and thanks for watching.